Hello everyone. Okay, on this video today we're going to look at presidential debates during the campaign itself. Just make sure you don't get them confused with the debates that take place in the primaries or the invisible primary. So these are ones which take place between the nominated candidate for the Democrats Republicans after the convention. Now, presidential debates, the first one ever was in 1960 between Richard Nixon, who had been President Eisenhower's vice president, and JFK. They then didn't have another one until the mid 1970s when President Ford had one with Jimmy Carter, and then there've been every presidential election since, if memory serves me right. What's quite nice about these debates? Obviously, there's usually sometimes there's one, sometimes there's more than one. Recent elections, there seems to have been about three in each cycle. They have changed the format of them as well. So the first one we will see, the two candidates were asked formal questions by like a panel of TV reporters or news reporters. Since then, they changed the style a little bit. Sometimes there's more of a town hall style feel to them. Sometimes it's just been the two candidates on a podium kind of looking over each other. So what we're going to have to do is have a look at a range of these debates. There's details of them in the in the Bennett textbook, which you need to have a look at and get some details down. But hopefully you'll find some of these highlights I found quite interesting, and they kind of tell us some of the do's and don'ts for presidential debates. Now, in terms of the influence on the election itself, again, the Bennett book's got some things on this. It is a bit more debatable, if you pardon the pun, because very often it does appear that people it's often confirmed, I suppose, what people already think of the two candidates. If they think a candidate is a bit arrogant, they often come across that way in the debates. Those who clearly support one side or the other kind of don't really change their minds. Again, it's very much like UK prime ministerial debates, isn't it? Where I'm sure most Labour supporters thought Jeremy Corbyn was wonderful in the debates, and they thought that Boris Johnson was awful, and I'm pretty sure that most Conservatives thought Boris Johnson was wonderful and Corbyn was awful. And he probably confirmed to people what they already thought of the different candidates. Anyway, first of all, we'll look at the 1961. Now, this might be a rare occasion, actually, where the debate may have changed the result, because the end result between JFK and Nixon was slender thin. And those who heard this debate on radio all thought that Nixon had won, but most people watched it on telly, and the opinion polls and pollsters seem to suggest overwhelmingly that JFK won. Partly, if you notice, Nixon was actually not very well for this debate. He'd actually hurt his back or hurt his arm, or he'd done something anyway, and there was a little bit of pain. He had some kind of cold type thing as well. He'd overheard JFK before the debate say he wasn't going to have makeup, so therefore Nixon didn't have makeup. JFK then lied and did have makeup. JFK wore a black suit, so he stood out from the screen, from the background, obviously. Whereas Nixon looked a bit pale, but his suit was the same colour as the background, which didn't help. He kind of blended into the background, and also he didn't look all that well, which he wasn't, and it kind of came across. It looked a bit shifty, which Richard Nixon had a tendency to do anyway. He wasn't really comfortable in his own skin. Anyway, we're going to watch the first couple of minutes of this debate just so you get a feel as to what happened. And again, those who may have watched the Biden-Trump first debate the other night, it's a lot more civilized. Let's just put it that way. So let's come on with this first one. Okay, let's bring up the right one. Here we go. Right, let me make it big.
I'm Charles Warren, Mutual News. I'm Stuart Novins, CBS News. Bob Fleming, ABC News. The first question to Senator Kennedy from Mr. Fleming.
Senator, the Vice President in his campaign has said that you are naive and at times immature. He has raised the question of leadership. On this issue, why do you think people should vote for you rather than the Vice President?
Well, the Vice President and I came to the Congress together. 1946, we both served in the Labor Committee. I've been there now for 14 years, the same period of time that he has. So that our experience in government is comparable. Secondly, I think the question is, what are the programs that we advocate? What is the party record that we lead? I come out of the Democratic Party, which in this century has produced Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman, and which supported and sustained these programs which I've discussed tonight. Mr. Nixon comes out of the Republican Party. He was nominated by it. And it is a fact that through most of these last 25 years, the Republican leadership has opposed federal aid for education, medical care for the aged, development of the Tennessee Valley, development of our natural resources. I think Mr. Nixon is an effective leader of his party. I hope he would grant me the same. The question before us is, which point of view and which party do we want to lead the United States?
Mr. Nixon, would you like to comment on that statement?
I have no comment.
The next question to Vice President Nixon from Mr. Van Oker.
Mr. Vice President, since the question of executive leadership is a very important campaign issue, I'd like to follow Mr. Noven's question. Now, Republican campaign slogans, you'll see them on signs around the country, as we did last week, say, it's experience that counts. That's over a picture of yourself, sir. Implying that you've had more governmental, executive decision-making experience than your opponent. Now, in his news conference on August 24th, President Eisenhower was asked to give one example of a major idea of yours that he adopted. His reply was, and I'm quoting, "If you give me a week, I might think of one. I don't remember." Now, that was a month ago, sir, and the President hasn't brought it up since. And I'm wondering, sir, if you can clarify which version is correct, the one put out by Republican campaign leaders or the one put out by President Eisenhower?
Well, I would suggest, Mr. Van Oker, that if you know the President, that was probably a facetious remark. I would also suggest that insofar as his statement is concerned, that I think it would be improper for the President of the United States to disclose the instances in which members of his official family had made recommendations, as I have made them through the years, to him which he has accepted or rejected. The President has always maintained, and very properly so, that he is entitled to get what advice he wants from his cabinet and from his other advisors without disclosing that to anybody, including, as a matter of fact, the Congress. Now, I can only say this. Through the years, I have sat in the National Security Council. I have been in the cabinet. I have met with the legislative leaders. I have met with the President when he made the great decisions with regard to Lebanon, Kimoy Matsu, other matters. The President has asked for my advice. I have given it. Sometimes my advice has been taken. Sometimes it is not. I do not say that I have made the decisions, and I would say that no president should ever allow anybody else to make the major decisions. The President only makes the decisions. All that his advisors do is to give counsel when he asks for it. As far as what experience counts and whether that is experience that counts, that isn't for me to say.
Okay, so you can see there some of the differences between between Nixon and JFK. The other thing to avoiding is making a mistake. President Ford in 1976 against this character, Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford was asked a question, and he basically said that East Europe was not under the control of the Russians, which was completely untrue during the Cold War. So best to avoid mistakes. Anyway, this debate here is the 1981 between Reagan and Carter. This is Jimmy Carter. The character you're going to see is Ronald Reagan. And what this is quite good at is Reagan was very good at debating. He was known as the great communicator. He was quite witty. He was quite humorous. And here we're going to see him bringing down a kind of an attack made by Carter, but in quite a gentle way, but also quite a memorable way. And if we have time in the 15 minutes of this video, I'll show the second part, like the summing up at the end, where Reagan does a brilliant summing up as to why people should vote for him and not Jimmy Carter. And it does kind of highlight how these are actually easier if you are not the incumbent president. You know, it's easier to be a debate and attack your opponent if you don't have a record to fight on. So let's have a look at Carter and then look at Reagan's response to him. I think it's about healthcare.
As a matter of fact, began his political career campaigning around this nation against Medicare. Now we have an opportunity to move toward national health insurance with an emphasis on the prevention of disease, an emphasis on outpatient care, not inpatient care, an emphasis on hospital cost containment to hold down the cost of hospital care for those who are ill, an emphasis on catastrophic health insurance, so that if a family is threatened with being wiped out economically because of a very high medical bill, then the insurance would help pay for it. These are the kind of elements of a national health insurance important to the American people. Governor Reagan, again, typically is against such a proposal.
Governor, there you go again. When I opposed Medicare, There was another piece of legislation meeting the same problem before the Congress. I happened to favor the other piece of legislation and thought that it would be better for the senior citizens and provide better care than the one that was finally passed. I was not opposing the principle of providing care for them. I was opposing one piece of legislation as versus another.
Okay, so you saw there that famous line of Reagan's, "There you go again," which was something which he used against Jimmy Carter quite effectively. Now, this is the closing statements of that debate, and this is showing Reagan, who had a brilliant, if you like, kind of closing statement against Jimmy Carter and his administration.
Next Tuesday, all of you will go to the polls. You'll stand there in the polling place and make a decision. I think when you make that decision, it might be well if you would ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is it easier for you to go and buy things in the stores than it was 4 years ago? Is there more or less unemployment in the country than there was 4 years ago? Is America as respected throughout the world as it was? Do you feel that our security is as safe, that we're as strong as we were 4 years ago? And if you answer all of those questions yes, why then I think your choice is very obvious as to who you'll vote for. If you don't agree, if you don't think that this course that we've been on for the last 4 years is what you would like to see us follow for the next 4, then I could suggest another choice that you have. This country doesn't have to be in the shape that it is in. We do not have to go on sharing in scarcity with the country getting worse off, with unemployment growing. We talk about the unemployment lines. If all of the unemployed today were in a single line, allowing 2 feet for each one of them, that line would reach from New York City to Los Angeles, California. All of this can be cured, and all of it can be solved. I have not had the experience that the president has had in holding that office, but I think in being governor of California, the most populous state in the Union, if it were a nation, it would be the 7th ranking economic power in the world. I too had some lonely moments and decisions to make. I know that the economic program that I have proposed for this nation in the next few years can resolve many of the problems that trouble us today. I know because we did it there. We cut the cost, the increased cost of government, the increase in half over the 8 years. We returned $5.7 billion in tax rebates, credits, and cuts to our people. We, as I've said earlier, fell below the national average in inflation when we did that. And I know that we did give back authority and autonomy to the people. I would like to have a crusade today, and I would like to lead that crusade with your help. And it would be one to take government off the backs of the great people of this country and turn you loose again to do those things that I know you can do so well because you did them and made this country great.
Okay, Reagan went on to win a landslide in the election, a few weeks later. Whether it was down to the debate or not is debatable, but you can see here a very strong debating kind of performance. And I kind of halted that at a really funny moment looking at his face, haven't I? Okay, I'll do part 2 of this video in the next few minutes.